Good evening, guys. So my plan today is to introduce you guys to FTD. We'll actually take a look at the FTD today. How do you connect it? How do you configure it? What is it all about? So what is FTD? I really don't care what it stands for, but just in case you want to know, it is Firepower Threat Detection. It has three main capabilities. It has a firewall built in. It has an IPS built in, which is your Firepower IPS. And it has a advanced malware detection. Or protection, sorry. Which is your file protection capability. All built into one device. All right. This is your next generation firewall from Cisco. You will take a look at a lot of good stuff that you can do with the firewall. But before we get started with the actual firewall, let's take a look at the management aspect of it. How do you manage it? How does it configure it? Where do you configure it from? All that. I think we've gone through it a couple of times, but it's a new product, so I don't mind covering it multiple times for you guys. Everybody following along so far? So the FTD is its own appliance. Omar, I'll send you the recording. I'm recording locally. I'll send it to you. Yep, I am recording. All right, so where did it go? So what is an FTD box? It comes in two flavors. It comes in the physical appliance flavor. And it comes in the virtual flavor as well. Virtual in the sense of what? You can deploy it as in VM. Both have the same capability. The only difference is over here, you can install it on its own on an ESXi box. Even when you do get a physical appliance, the physical appliance in reality is nothing more than a C-series server in the background, which has this FTD software preloaded on it. In order to configure and manage FTD, you also need another virtual appliance, which is your FMC. This is your management device. This is the actual protection device. All right. Again, comes either in a physical or a virtual iteration. So either one can be in that type of setup. Everybody okay with this? You guys understand that? Now, first thing I want you guys to understand and make sure you remember that is FTD does not have ASA. It's not ASA 9.x. So don't think FTD is 9.x. In reality, the way FTD does firewalling is completely different than 9.x. Do you guys remember what we've been talking about in terms of the firewall with the ASA 9.x, what we have been doing so far? We have that concept of what? Security level. Right? In which you have every interface assigned what? A security level. High level to low is allowed. Low to, to low level allowed by default, and low to high you need an ACL and all that. The FTD does not work on that concept. It works completely differently, and we'll take a look at that. Everybody understand that? So don't think that you know the ASA 9.x, you know FTD. It is a firewall, but the way it works is completely different. So get used to a new way of doing firewalling. Yes, at the end of the day, it is a firewall, but the way it's implemented is completely different. Anybody over here work with a zone-based firewall? On the router. Remember, on a router, if you want to implement a firewall, it's called a zone-based firewall? Nope. All right, if you haven't, well, this is a zone-based firewall. It works based on a concept of zones. We'll take a look at that. Typical setup. Let's say you have different parts of your network that, let's say this is the internet cloud. And maybe this is your private WAN cloud using MPLS VPNs. They're connecting into different parts of your network. This is your edge router for the internet, and this is your edge router for your MPLS VPN. Behind both of them, you want to put a security device. So this would be your FTD, and you would have another FTD over here. These are two different boxes, either physical or virtual. FTD number 1, FTD number 2. Good so far? And behind the FTD box is maybe your internal network, maybe common internal network, or maybe different, and maybe a common DMZ network. Or maybe a different DMZ network. It depends on how you want to have it. All right, let's create a separate DMZ for the other side. So I have a DMZ over here, and I have a DMZ over here for the internet server. Good? Clear so far? Now, in order to manage it, command line is not used as often. The management is done through a special interface that is on your FTD, which is known as the management interface. So you would have your normal physical interfaces that are your data plane interfaces. Then you would have a separate interface for management, which in turn would connect into what? Into your management network. And in that management network would be your admin PC, and you would have your FMC. You would set up a relationship between your FTD to register itself with whom? FMC. You'll set this relationship up. So when you go inside your FMC, you will see your multiple FTDs, which can be managed from a single location. you would browse from your admin PC into the FMC to manage your FTDs. Everybody okay with that? You guys understand that? Good so far. Everybody fine with this? So this is what your topology will look like. Do we need to configure FMC to configure FTD? Absolutely. So once you go into the FMC, and you'll see that in a bit, you would go in and register your FTD. But in order for you to register your FTD from your FMC, you would need to have a relationship set up from the FTD. So it's like a relationship that is set up between the FTD and FMC, and that's the first thing that you actually do. Good so far? So what does my network look like over here? This, I gave you an example of that network. What does my network look like over here? My network, the way I've set it up, it's all virtualized. I've set up virtual switches to do that. But what I have is this. I have my 3 CSRs, which are simulating my outside network. They're simulating the inside network and a DMZ network. The device names, as you guys have been seeing them, are what? CSR2, the outside, CSR1, and the DMZ is CSR3. Good so far? Now, in here, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be putting my FTD box. It's over here in the middle. It is connected for the data plane traffic using an interface towards the outside. It has a link towards the inside. In reality, over here, in my case, it's connected to a vSwitch because mine, everything is through ESXi. But you can have it as a physical thing. Okay. This is my FTD over here. Let's call it FTD1. Now, besides this, this is your data plane network. I also have a control plane network. Which is over here. On this control plane network, I have my FTD connected. I also have my FMC connected. I have my PC connected. One second, I'll get there. And what else do I have over here? Yeah, this is good enough for us over here. So I have my PC over here. The one that I'm sitting on, it's connected on this network. and it has this virtual box called the FMC box. Now, FMC is nothing more than a device, a management device. If you want to buy a physical software or physical implementation of it, it is basically nothing more than a UCS C series server installed with with a management software. Management it has a console connection, which you really don't do too much with. You just set an IP address to it. And it has a Ethernet connection. Ethernet is the one that you use to connect up and browse to it. This Ethernet connection supports HTTPS. So you connect up into the FMC from your PC using HTTPS. Now you can also, rather than getting a UCS C series with the software installed on it, you can get the OVA file and install it on a VM. That's what I've done over here. Stands for the Firepower. Initially, it used to be called the Firesite Management Center. They changed the name to Firepower. Management Center. FMC. Got it? So this is my FMC over here. This is my PC, the PC that I'm sitting on. Let's call it the management PC. Good, guys? Everybody okay with this? Now, on my network, I have called this network 192.168.1.0. That's the network address. That is correct. It's the management console for all your FTDs, not just one. Even if I had multiple FTDs in my network, they would all be registered to the same FMC. So you would browse to the FMC to be able to manage all your FTDs. So it gives you a centralized component. I just told you, you initially do it through what? The command line to give it an IP address, but everything else is done through HTTP. Last time I checked, Hardik, HTTP was browsing through graphical. Right? It's right there. I think you joined the class late, Ahmed. That specifically I told, first thing that I talked about was Firepower or FTDs are not ASAs. FTD is its own box. It's not the ASA 55X series. That is ASA 9.x. Now, one thing that you might think about is this. What they did was they allowed you the ability to implement the ASA with IPS. So if you want to do the old ASA, you could get the ASA 55X X series, on which using SSD drives, you could install the Firepower capability, which is the IPS capability. This is the product that Cisco acquired from SourceFire. Now, this is still not FTD. This is an ASA firewall with IPS capabilities. This is the old packet filter, which allows you to take a look at what packets are allowed or not allowed based on TCP, UDP, port numbers, IP addresses, those type of things. All right, old ASA technology with the IPS capability. That's something that you could do on the 55X, but it's still ASA 9.x. ASA 9.x is not next generation ASA. Still a packet filter. FTD is your next generation firewall. Yes, you can, Ibrahim. So Ahmed, you're okay with this? You understand this? So FTD is your next generation firewall. So eventually what's going to happen is your ASA 9.x's will become end of life and everything will be FTD. FTD is your firewall, the next generation firewall, but it does not work as an ASA. It works differently. They wanted management to be centralized. So to do that, you need to have FTD, FMC. Just like in IPS, in order to manage IPS, you used to use IDM. Same concept. Or for the ASA, you used to have ASDM. So you have FMC just for that. In my case, I've installed a base FMC with nothing on it. All I've done is given it an IP address, bought it up and given it an IP address. And the IP address over here for my FMC is 45 on this network. Ahmed, you need to start the class on time, man. If you look at the video, up front, I talked about the same exact thing. It's not fair on the other guys that I need to repeat the same thing. No, it does not work based on security levels on the FTD. It works on zones. And if you know zone-based firewall on the router, it works just like that. So there's no security levels on FTD, none. We'll get into that, but I specifically said the same statement that you're making over here. All right. So you guys get the overall picture of how FTD incorporates into your network. So you have your firewall, but the thing about this firewall is not just a firewall. It is a next generation firewall. And I'll show you what the next generation part of it is. It is an IPS, which is built in. It is the AMP, which is the malware protection built in. Now, what's the difference between the three? What is the firewalling? How is firewalling different than IPS? How is IPS different than AMP? Firewalling is this. I have a box over here. It's a web server. I want limited access from the outside to the web server. How do I do that? I specify when the packet comes in into the firewall onto this box 192.168.1.11. Let's say that's my web server. This box should only allow, or the firewall should only allow traffic which is TCP from any source to 192.168.1.11 for ports what? 80, 443, maybe you have changed the port number, 8000, 8080. All these are port numbers for what? For a web server. So that's what a firewall does. Okay? When I have a user from the outside access this web server, is this web server or this request that's coming in from the client accessing this web server, could this potentially be a malicious request into the web server? Malicious in the sense of what? Could it be that it might be trying to harm the web server? Maybe do a defacing attack against the web server. The firewall is not checking that. The firewall is just saying that if a packet comes in into 192.1.168.1.11, it should be one of those 4 ports. So a telnet packet into that web server or a SMTP packet into that web server IP address is not going to be allowed. Only those port numbers are going to be allowed. It's not checking the content in terms of what? Whether it's a attack packet or not. The firewall doesn't do that. That's the job of your IPS. What does the IPS do? If the firewall is checking what? TCP port 80 into a particular IP, IPS checks what? IPS checks network headers and tries to match the network headers against what? A signature database which contains patterns of attacks, patterns of well-known attacks. All right, let's understand what I'm doing, Hardik. We'll get to what we're going to do. So just like antivirus does, yes and no. A good comparison, but no, not like an antivirus. It is, an antivirus does what? Antivirus checks files, patterns on a file. Okay? The IPS is not checking files. What is it checking? It's checking network pattern, network headers, network traffic. So yes, it does have the same type of mechanism in the sense that it is checking a certain pattern of a well-known attack. The difference is it's not checking files like an antivirus does. It's checking network packets and header patterns that might be part of an attack. I'll give you a very simple example. When I do a ping to an IP address, what's the size of a ping packet normally? How big is a ping packet? I'm sending a ping to a device to test connectivity. What's the size? Generally, it's not the same size. Different operating systems have different sizes, but what's the normal size? What's a range? On a PC, the range is about 32 bytes. How about on a router? Because it's a dumb packet, so it sends some dumb headers or dumb data just to check for what? Connectivity. Either way, how big is the packet? Is it big or small? It's a small packet, isn't it? Will this packet be fragmented? Will a normal ping packet be fragmented? No. Why not? It's small. But what if an ICMP packet comes in and you see that packet has fragmentation on it? So you see an ICMP packet with a fragmentation on it. It is a fragmented packet. What does that tell you? Somebody is sending a ping packet with data size of greater than 1500 bytes. Is that normal? That is an example of what? A fragmented ICMP attack. Somebody is flooding your network with what? ICMP packets with a lot of data on it. It shouldn't be happening. It's an attack. So it's looking for what? the header being ICMP, the protocol being ICMP, and the fragment offset is greater than 1. So it's more than one fragment. That means it's an attack packet. Do you get my point? So it's, oh, ping is allowed, but this is a bad ping, so I'm going to block it. So let's say I was allowing ping to go through my firewall. Let's say my rule says allow ping so they can test it. But now I get a ping that is greater than 1500 bytes. That means, oh, it's a bad packet, so the IPS can block it. Everybody okay with that? Do you guys understand that? So that's what an IPS is. So you have a firewall, you have an IPS. So what is AMP then? AMP takes it one level beyond network packets. No, it's not layer 7. This could be layer 7 as well. Your signature network IPS could be layer 7. You can have, for example, when I said you can have web attacks, malware, or sorry, not malware, you can have network attacks based on HTTP or DNS or SMTP. These are all layer 7 packets. IPS is doing that same thing for me. What is AMP doing? AMP is basically not worried about the network packet itself. That is the job of what? IPS. The function of AMP is to take a look at files that are transmitted. So when a file is transmitted, it takes a look at that file and sees if it has any malware on it. So now it's more like a malware check or a virus check type of thing on the files. When you send a 2 meg file, is it going to go in one packet? One, let's say it's a FTP file. Is it going to be in one TCP21 packet, for example? Multiple chunks. So the malware is not going to be in one file. It's going to be spread across multiple packets. Your IPS is not going to check or put all these small packets together to see if it takes a look at the consolidated file that is getting transmitted. That's what AMP does. AMP checks what file is getting transmitted, checks the file for what? Any malware in it. So it puts the packets together, gets a file, checks the file for any malware or virus on it. So you guys understand that? That's not part of the, not just a network header. It's the actual file that is getting transmitted, not in one packet. It's transmitted over multiple packets. It puts gets a file, makes the whole file, checks the file for what? Any malware on it. Not only that, it can also be used for if the file is less than 1500 bytes. Normally, these files are bigger than 1. Now, it also gives you one additional capability, which is called data loss prevention. It not only checks for what? Malware. It also allows you the ability to specify that certain type of files should not be allowed to come in or go out of your network. So if you don't want your Excel spreadsheets to be sent from the inside to the outside, you can have a file policy saying, hey, listen, even if the file is not corrupt, it does not have any malware on it, I don't want people on the inside sending Excel files out. Why? Excel files might be containing what data? Confidential, critical data for the company. I don't want those files getting out of my network. That type of capability is called data loss prevention, DLP. So AMP can also do that for you. So it's not only checking for what? Malware, it's also checking for a certain type of file that you don't want to go out. Even if it's a clean file, why? This file might contain confidential data. Do you get my point? So it's checking the contents of the file now. It's checking the type of file that you're sending. You get my point? But in order to do that, I need to compile the multiple packets into a single file that is getting transmitted, take a look at it, and then either allow it or disallow it based on your file policy. So you have 3 different products built into what? One device. Good so far? So you guys have a better understanding of what these 3 devices are. All right. Let me write this down in your notes. This allows you the ability to control the type of traffic coming in to a specific server dash servers for a particular service. It does not check whether the traffic coming in is malicious or not. Good. Example. What is this? This allows you the ability to check whether, let me just put this over here, whether the traffic transmitted through your network matches the pattern of a well-known attack by checking it against a database of well-known attacks. This database is updated on a regular basis by Cisco. Good. Correct, yes. It's taking some of the capabilities of your FTD and implementing it in ASA 9.x. When you do those type of things on an ASA, it's like a router acting as a firewall. Can a router act as a firewall? Yes. If you want, you can make a router act as a firewall, but it's not a firewall. It's a router which is acting as a firewall. Same thing over here. So when you say implementing next generation firewall services with the ASA, basically you're saying you're taking the next generation firewall capabilities and running them on an ASA. It's not a next generation firewall, it's just running those type of services. Whereas FTD would do it inherently as part of the core operating system. So what is AMP then? This focuses on the files that are being transmitted through your network. AMP checks the files for malware. It also allows you to do data loss prevention DLP by blocking certain file types, even though they might not be infected. Your company policy might not want the file type to leave your network. HTTP, if you want to do HTTP inspection, you need to install the services of the HTTP. The certificate of HTTP, the server, needs to be installed on that device. It can do SSL interception as well. That capability is called SSL interception, not the easiest one to do. The reason for that is you need to install the server certificate on the FTD to be able to do that. Is it possible to do it? Yes, it is. It takes a lot of resources to do that. AMP works by connecting to external servers for checkup or local database, both. It has a cloud component. It will send the hash of the file to the cloud, or it can check it locally as well. So it has a local database, but it also keeps a check on the AMP cloud where it checks for the same things. So it has both capabilities. All right. Done? Let's do it then. So now that you know what this product is, what the device is, let's go ahead and implement it. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I have a VM for it. I'm going to go to my FTD, open the console, so it's going through the console port. I'm going to assign the FTD an IP address. This IP address is going to be used for managing it. One second, guys. All right. How do you do that? That's something that you need to take a look at in terms of getting these VMs to be able to do that. Cisco does give you what do you call it? A 90-day evaluation copy to do that. You need to have a powerful box to be able to do that, but the capability is there. All right. So what's the first thing that I need to do over here? First step, configure the FTD with a IP address. How do I do that? Configure network IPv4 manual, give it an IP address. I'm going to be giving it an IP address where, if you look at your diagram, do you remember this? I'm going to give it an IP address on this network, on the 192.168.1.x network. My FMC is already there. I'm going to give it an IP address of, let's say, 46. Doesn't have to be on the same network as long as I have reachability to it. I need to give it an IP address, so I'll say 46, subnet mask, and a default gateway. Let's say my default gateway over here is one line though. All right, that's how you do it. Let me just show you how. So over here, I'm going to say configure network IPv4 manual. You could have given an IP address through DHCP. I would not recommend that. 46. Understood. So what am I doing on FTD from the command prompt? First thing, I'm giving it a IP address. Simple enough? Now I can use this IP address to connect up from what? From my FMC to this, make a relationship. Now the next thing I need to do, configure a relationship with the FMC that you want it to be managed from. Set a secret key for this relationship. Configure manager, add the IP address. What IP address do I need to add over here? Why 45 above? The IP address of the FMC. Make sense? Followed by that secret key, whatever you want to call it. I'll call it Cisco 123. I'll be required to put this on my FMC when I register. Good so far? So again, going back to my FTD over here, configure manager, add 45 Cisco 123. Done? That's from my FTD side. So I've registered or specified that the manager that can manage me is 192.168.1.45 with a key of Cisco 123. Good so far? Now that I've done that, I'm now going to go to my management PC and browse into my FMC. So I can be on the FMC to be able to do what? Connect up my FTD to it. I don't browse to my FTD, I browse to what? My FMC. Clear? Let's do that. Now, third step, open a browser towards the FMC. FMC coming ready, made virtual. When you install the OVA file onto your ESXi, you need to put a command called configure network, one command. It is like a wizard will set the IP address, subnet mask, and a default gateway. It also asks for an admin username and password. Open a browser towards the FMC using HTTPS. In my case, what is it? HTTPS 192. All right. Preferred browser. For Cisco products, for management, use IE. The other ones have issues. So personally, I would use what? IE as my management product. Don't know, man. Something to do with your server. Maybe not enough resources. Just having a banana, man. I haven't had lunch. Works best with IE. Everybody good? Not just this. Not just this. I would also use IE for management of ACS, IDM, ASDM. IE is the one that works best with these type of management tools. Good. So let me do that over here. Close it so we can start from scratch. Hardik, can we do the class, please? Call Microsoft. HTTPS 192.168.1.45. Browse. Continue to website. Ask for a username and password. The username that I've set over here and you're asked to set that password up front. I'll put that in over here. Actually, let me just show you. This is my FMC. It's called configure network. I've already configured, so I'm past that point, but this is the command. Configure dash network. So username is admin, and when it prompted me for setting the password, I set the password as source fire. It requires an uppercase and a lowercase, so that's what I've done. The command to initially configure the FMC is configure dash network. Not configure space network like you have on the FTD. This is configure dash network. Good. So I've done that. I'm in over here on my browser. Let's log in. I am not logging into my FTD. I'm logging into what? My FMC. Understand that. This is your console. Get used to it. Absolutely. That's the whole beauty of FMC. If you have multiple IPS boxes, multiple security devices, or you have multiple FTDs, you have a consolidated console to manage all these devices. The good thing about that is you'll be creating objects over here. These objects will be created for multiple devices. So you can use those objects across FTDs. So management becomes a lot simpler. So if you have a particular network object, you can use it on multiple FTDs once you create it, or policies for that matter. So if you have a specific policy, you can use the same policy on multiple FTDs. You can manage all ASAs as well, yes. So the first thing that I need to do over here is go to devices. Under devices, if you take a look at the left, you see what? Device management. This is where you go in and you configure your or add your device. Right now, I don't have any devices in my device management. So the first thing that you need to do over here is do what? Configure the FTD as a managed device. What do you need to do that? Go to device, device management, add device. Once you do that, it will prompt you for different things. One is name. One is your IP address. Or you can also specify a domain name if you want. You have to specify your secret key. You need to specify a block policy. What is the default policy of traffic going from one interface to another? Let me show you that and it'll make sense. So over here, if you take a look at it, after I went to devices, device management, I'm over here right now. The red shows you that I'm over there. Click on add a device. Host is the IP address. What is the IP address I need to specify over here? Display name, I can keep the IP address or give it a name. This one is irrelevant. You can call it whatever you want. Registration key, what is this? The one that I specified at the time I did what? Configure manager. And the access control policy, what is this? On a firewall, on FTD, as I said earlier on, there is no concept of security levels. It works on the premise of what are known as zones. if you have two interfaces, part of two different zones. These are logical grouping of interfaces. Logical group. You put one interface in one zone. Let's say zone internal. And you put this into zone external. What default policy do you want to be applied when traffic goes from an interface in one zone to the other? That's what the access control policy specifies over here. What do you think you should do by default? What should your default policy be for a firewall? Should you allow traffic or block traffic? There's none. You need to create. You want to block, right? So I'll create a policy over here. Give it a name, whatever I want to call it. I'll say implicit block, just a name. But over here, the default action when you create it is block all traffic. If you want to create a policy, if I'm just doing IPS, I can create a policy for, remember I told you you can also manage your IPS from here. You can use the intrusion prevention. Network discovery is allowed. Let the traffic go through. So the ones that you want to use for your FTD is either block all traffic or network discovery. What should you do? As you guys suggested, which is a good suggestion, is to do what? Block traffic. This is just a name, but the default action is block. Yeah, it's just allowing traffic to go through, but creating a report on it. So block policy, or I should say access control policy, create with a default action of a block. You have the ability to group multiple FTDs into one group. So if you might want to apply a policy to multiple devices at the same time, you can do that by applying it to a group. So if you have multiple FTDs, you can group them. So the name I said was FTD-1, IP address I specified as 46, key was good so far? Now the other thing that you need to do over here, Palo Alto works on this NG mechanism, the one that I'm showing you right now. Licensing, I have a 90-day license for what? Malware, threat, and URL filtering. You can also do URL filtering on it. Although it does URL filtering, the WSA has a much better database for URL filtering. Basic URL filtering you can do over here. Now, once I've specified all my licenses, click on register. What do I want to do? Firewall? No, not firewall. What are the three? Malware, threat. You need to have FMC with internet access so that it can keep on downloading the new. Remember the AMP portion where you have a cloud check? It needs to have internet connectivity. Threat and URL filtering. Good. Register. Let's save this document. All right. Now you need to be patient with this. It does take some time for the registration to take place. So give it some time. By the way, this is the latest version of FTD. That's the other thing that I want you guys to be aware of. In the ASA, what is my version of the operating system? What's my operating system for the ASA? Correct? FTD started with 5, now it's at 6.x. If you have access from the Cisco website to download it, yeah, they'd give you like a 90-day free license, I believe. So now it's up. The first thing that I generally do over here, otherwise it gives you errors. And I want you guys to be aware of this. You notice right next to the system, there's a red button over here. This is an important button. It's like your console telling you about messages and stuff. So click on it. Tells you that the deployment to device is in progress. So it's deploying that. Remember that block policy that I had? It's deploying that policy to the device right now. So it tells you right now what deployments are going on. It tells you about any tasks that have happened on that particular device and any problems that it might have. So the only problem that I have over here right now is what? Because of the stuff that I'm doing, I have 4 CPUs. It's a quad processor, and all of them are maxed out. But that's okay. I'm not running any traffic through it, so it's okay. Good enough. Now, the first thing that I do once I register is to set my time synchronization. Right now, it defaults to a time synchronization with a URL on the internet. I don't have any DNS configuration on here, so it's going to have an issue. So what I do is I go to my system over here. Under system, one of the options is configuration. You see that? Let me write this down. Step 5, configure time synchronization to be local. Otherwise, it's going to try to do it based on NTP to another device. Didn't get that point, Alex. This setup is based on industrial standard. In terms of the server, the server has a lot of memory, but the CPUs are not that high. So you want to get a more powerful CPU if you want to do it in production. For my stuff, it's okay because I'm not going to pass too much traffic through it. Where did I do this at? System, configuration, under configuration, I'll go to time synchronization. See towards the bottom, there's time synchronization. Right now, set my clock via NTP. I don't have any DNS server and all that type of stuff done. I'll just say configure it manually and save it. Now, once I do that, it'll take some time for it to come back. And in the meantime, I'll show you that I do have another problem over here now. What is a problem? The Firepower, which is your FMC, time synchronization is out of status or out of sync. Why? It was trying to do it to this sourcefire.pool.ntp.org. I changed it to manually, but it takes some time for this message to clear up. Same thing with the FTD. Give it some time, it'll clear up. The CPUs I'm not too concerned about, but these messages I want to get rid of it eventually. You need to be patient initially with it because it does do a lot of stuff to the device. So let it happen. Once it's done, you'll eventually clean up that message as well. Good so far? Now, my objective today is to do a very basic stuff over here for the FTD. That is interface configuration. Set it up to do it manually. Click save. Done. Last step for today. Configure the interfaces for the FTD. All right, it's done now. Save was successful. It took a bit, and it'll take even further for this time synchronization message to go out. In the meantime, what I'll do is I'll configure my IPs. If you guys remember on my diagram, I have 3 networks. I'm going to keep the outside network over here. Set it as 192.1.20.0. I'll set this guy to .20. This is already set to .2. I'll set this network over here to .10. This is already set to .1. I'll set this network over here to this guy, and I will set this one over here is already set to .3. So this is what I want to do. I want to set the FTD with these IP addresses so it can communicate to the 3 routers around it. So how do I do that? I will go to my devices. Under devices, device management. Same place that I did, I went to do what? Device registration. So same place I'll go. Under devices, device management. Now I don't need to add, it's already there. It's got this thing on it. That's probably because of your, what do you call it? Time synchronization. It's not done yet. Still showing me that it's out of sync. It takes time, but eventually it'll go away. To edit, you click on the pencil. The pencil icon over here is edit. On my interface, I have the diagnostic interface. This is if I want to send any of my dumps to Cisco. I don't use that. I have the 3 data interfaces, gig 00, gig 01, gig 02. I'm going to configure this. This is all GUI. So I want to configure the gig 00, which is the inside interface. How? Click on the pencil. Name. Inside, enable it. Security zone. Notice there's no security level. Mode is if I just want to do spanning to it. Passive means I want to set it up for IPS only or none. None, basically leave it like a normal firewall. No special mode, normal. The name of the interface is inside, no security levels. You need to give it a zone. I'll call it the internal zone. Now, just to make sure you understand something over here, if you've done zone-based firewall, you would know this, but if you haven't, in terms of zone-based firewalls, when you had a firewall over here that was acting as a zone-based firewall, if I put two interfaces in the same zone, these two interfaces would be able to talk to each other without any firewalling. So all traffic would be allowed. But if I had an interface in a different zone, so let's say this is the internal zone where I have two interfaces, these two guys will be able to talk to each other without any firewalling. This is the external zone. Now, if I want to go from internal to external, I would need to specify a policy. There's no high-low. Even from inside to outside, you would need to specify a policy. Everybody okay with that? So if I have two interfaces in the same zone, they will be able to talk to each other. Interfaces in two different zones, by default, will use the default policy, which I've set to what? Block all. So where do I do the configuration of the interfaces? Under the interfaces, then it's all graphical. So I'll just put GUI or watch the video. So internal zone, inside, and what else? IPv4 address. I'm going to say the internal address is 10.1.1.10/24. Okay. That's the inside. Let's do the outside. Edit. Enable it. Security zone, I'm going to create a new one. External zone. IPv4 192.20.10/24. The third zone is third interface is DMZ. Enable it. New zone. DMZ zone. So my three interfaces are configured. All good? No, it doesn't show you the management interface. Once I'm done with these configurations, two things. Number one, I need to save it. The save that you do is only within the FMC. The save is only within the FMC. It does not push this configuration down to the FTD yet. For that, you need to do a deploy. So once you save the changes in FMC, when you go to deploy, deploy means push. It'll show you that there's an FTD which has a policy that is out of date, means there's been changes that are done. The check mark means everything else has been applied. There's device configuration that is not applied. What has not been applied? Something to do with the NG firewall policy or something. So whatever NGF interface and policy is not applied. So I'll go ahead and deploy it. So when I deploy it, what does it do? It actually creates a configuration set and pushes it onto what? The FTD. Now, it doesn't do it immediately. You need to be patient with it. And that's where this alert button is really useful, because it'll tell you on the tasks that are happening right now. It says pre-deploy for the global policy is done. It's generated the configuration. Now it's going to do the deployment. Initialize the policy deployment. So it takes the policies and pushes it down to your FTD. You might say it's a lot of work. I could just configure it from a single location. Yes, you're just doing one firewall. Maybe it's a little bit more work. But number one, it's graphical. Number two, if you're adding more firewalls, these policies are reusable. These policies can be deployed to multiple devices at the same time. So it gives you a lot more capability on a larger scale. Where is it? It's right over here at the top. Full routing. We'll do that tomorrow, but it has full routing capability. It does BGP, it does RIP, it does static, it does OSPF, multicast routing as well. It says applied successfully. Give it some time though. Although it says applied successfully, it has applied it, but it does take some time for it to kick in. This time synchronization will also eventually go away, and your interfaces will also come up. See this? The greens, that means the status is good. That means I have configured it. They should be up and running. But again, you need to be patient with it once you deploy the policy. It does take some time for it to kick in. So let's go over here. I'll go to my CSR1. I'll ping 10.1.1.10, which is my firewall, and I can ping it. We'll do all that as we go through it. We'll do no config for diagnostic. Diagnostic, I told you, not this diagnostic interfaces if you wanted to send some configs to Cisco for dumps and stuff. So now router 1, which is on the inside, can ping 10.1.1.10. Yes, it does support VPN as well. All right. So let's do CSR2, which is on the outside. And I will do CSR3. On the appliance, yes. The virtual, yes, you can, but you need to buy the appropriate license. Good. So right now I have the ability to communicate to what? To all my interfaces around the FTD, right? Or the devices can communicate to the FTD. So set my topology up right now. Is it the default rule that 2 traffic is allowed? Yes, that is correct. So if you take a look at this over here, I have basically configured my topology right now. The next thing that we'll be taking a look at over here is your firewalling capability. Sorry, routing capability on the firewall. Once that's done, we'll take a look at how to allow the traffic to go through it to do your normal access policies. We'll take a look at how to do NATing. So 3 main things that we need to take a look at over here. Number 1, routing. Number 2, access. Number 3, NAT. All right. So we'll set up the routing so we can do routing on the firewall so it can communicate and have all its networks there. Once that's done, we'll do the access, which is your firewalling. This is your firewall capability. The access is your firewall. And then we'll take a look at NAT. Good? All this good stuff tomorrow. Let me save this for you guys. Save as. Done. Hope you guys had fun. See you guys tomorrow. Same time.